Let's be ready.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with another episode of the Memories of Plymouth. I'm Louise McCormick. I'm the president of the Plymouth Historical Society, and we've been running this program for the past 3 years. It is today 2019. For the past few years, we've been bringing in folks who are associated with Plymouth and the surrounding areas. Some of them have been born here, went to school here, worked, or just socialized. But regardless, they've been willing to come in and share their memories, their recollections, their stories that we think are so valuable for us to tape for you. So let's begin. The person that we have today is Phyllis Holbrooke, to my immediate left. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for sharing. It's been a pleasure to spend several hours with you in the gardens and in the house. So I'm going to ask you quite a few questions if I can. The first few will just talk about you. So there may be somebody in the whole world that doesn't know you. Maybe there's one. So I'll ask you questions about your family, if you don't mind, a little bit about your education. Eventually we'll get to some topics of the area, town. Are you ready?
I think so.
That sounds great. If you would, for the audience, if you would tell us your complete name, including your maiden name.
I was born Phyllis Elizabeth Benton Holbrook.
And is any part of that a namesake? Are you named after someone?
Well, I don't sure. I think the Elizabeth is supposed to be for an aunt, but I'm not sure.
Well, we'll put that on hold. Maybe Jane can find out for us. We'll see. Let's see. Where were you born?
I was born in Thornton, and I was actually born in my grandmother's house because she was a practical nurse, and she had worked with Dr. Cheney and Dr. Palmer, I believe, 300-400 times.
Wow.
Delivering babies.
How many years have you been a resident of Thornton?
Well, most of my life, except for the 1 year that we rented on the Mirror Lake Road, so that'll be almost 93 years old.
Oh, that brings up another question. Perhaps, do we dare tell our age, or we just tell the date that we were born?
Let everybody subtract.
Yeah, they'll have to learn how to do a little math here.
I was born September 20th, 1926.
1926.
So I'm 92 now.
And when's your birthday?
In September.
In September?
20th.
20th.
9/20/26.
9/20/26. Thank you, thank you. Your parents, what were their names?
Well, my father was Scott Benton. My mother was Evelyn Merrill, and they got married in 1926. And we lived on what is now 175, Route 175 in Thornton.
Do you have a picture of the house?
I don't have a picture of the house but I have the picture of the house where I was born.
Ooh, maybe we can look at that.
Because, where is it, Louise?
Take your time, take your time.
It's this house right here. Can you show?
I can, and you can too.
Yeah.
We do this. So this house is still standing?
This one is still standing. It's been repainted. It's light gray now because it was resold. And the barns have been torn down, but the main house is still standing with a porch.
All right. What would be the occupation of your mother and your father?
Well, my father was basically a farmer.
Okay.
And in the wintertime, of course, they did whatever they needed to do to make a living. They might go out logging, or he worked in a paper mill at one time, and he had a various number of jobs.
That's great. And Mom?
Stay-at-home mother.
How many siblings did you have?
Well, there were 5 of us.
5 of us, all right.
And I was the oldest I got 2 brothers. I had 2 brothers. I've got 1 brother left and 2 sisters.
I think I'm being really inquisitive. You were born at home. How about your siblings?
They were all born at home, even Elton. And Dr. Umstead was the doctor, and he said, that's the last baby I'll deliver in the house.
So many people have mentioned Dr. Umstead over the years.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Let's see. Your husband's name?
Raymond Alan Holbrook.
And everybody knew him as
Bud.
Bud Holbrook.
Yeah, everybody knew him as Bud.
All right. And he's been gone how long now?
5 years.
5 years. And his occupation?
Well, he was a truck driver, and then he was in the service, and when he come back from the service, he went back to work for Park Young as a truck driver. And then he went into the mill, and he worked in the finishing mill. I think he was only tested paper, tested the paper.
For the quality of
for
the
the
paper?
quality, and
All right.
and he did that. And then when the mill shut down, he went to work for Waterville Company.
Which was probably bursting at its seams at that time,
Yeah.
growing and growing and growing. Interesting. You said Bud was in the service, and thank you for your service. Can you share a little bit about that, where he was stationed, perhaps?
Well, as near as, I mean, I didn't know him when he was in the service, but he was over in the European section, and he was in Holland, Germany, and France. He never got down into Italy.
Okay. This is during World War II.
World War II.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. So an opportunity to travel and also provide a service for our country.
Yep.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Let's see. You had shared with me that you were affiliated with a Grange. Could we talk about that a little bit?
Well, back in my teen years, the Grange was the only place we could go for entertainment. And I went through all 7 degrees, because they had the National Grange down in Worcester, Massachusetts. So people from Thornton went down. We had 2 carloads of people that went down, took the degree.
Now, I don't know what the 7 degrees are. Can you share
Well,
that with us?
I don't. I mean, West Thornton Grange was the subordinate Grange, and then you go to the State Grange.
Levels.
And then national. I think there are 7 degrees you have to go through.
Good to know. Good.
But I'm not in it now. And I didn't pay my dues, so they dropped me real quick.
Do we have a picture of that, perhaps?
I don't have
Let's
the
see.
Grange.
Okay, we'll hold on that just for a
No,
second.
this is when I first went to work.
I think there's something else that we talk about when we say Grange. Who did you meet at a Grange dance?
Well, that's where I met my husband. When he came back out of the service, we used to have dances at the Grange, or if we had the Grange meeting, we'd always meet after and dance. But I think this was in February, we had a Red Cross dance party. And he came. And when it came time for Ladies' Choice, I asked him to dance.
You asked him to dance.
I asked, well, Ladies' Choice.
Oh, of course, of course.
Ladies' Choices.
I was going to say you were really bold, but
Yeah.
no, you were fine.
Well, they, and all we had for music was the piano.
Oh, wow.
But my mother would play, my grandmother would play, these other 2 women, the 2 Gilman sisters, not Harriet Gilman,
We're going to get a telephone call, and they're going to tell us who the Gilman sisters are pretty soon.
well, Edith Gilman was one that would play, but her sister from Woodstock, I can't remember.
It'll come.
But sometimes they just played chords, sometimes they just played G tunes. Some of them could play a good waltz. And that's when I asked Bud to dance
And
for
the
a
rest,
waltz.
and the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history.
I like it. I like it. Thank you.
That's what we did a lot.
Let's talk about education. Where did you go to school? Where was elementary school for you?
Elementary school for me was a 1-room schoolhouse.
And the town?
All right in Thornton. I walked to school, and the schoolhouse at that time was right where the present elementary school is.
Thornton Central.
Thornton Central, yeah.
Okay.
I had to walk, I think it must have been less than a mile, because if we were too close to the school, we had to walk, but if we were too far, they had to bus us.
All right.
But people up in Thornton got bused. But
Did you have kindergarten at that time?
We never had kindergarten until, oh, I don't even remember.
Was this the only school, one-room schoolhouse for Thornton, or were there others?
No, we had, well, I think we had 11 at one time, but we were down to, in 1950, in the 50s, we were down to 3 one-room schoolhouses. One in West Thornton, one in the central, and one out to the Upper Mad River Road.
Wow. So the assumption, most people would have walked to one of those 3 schools during your time?
If they were close enough, they would walk.
Wow, wow.
And we had one teacher in each grade, and they had all 8 grades at that time.
And would you have had a principal?
Not until we got into the centralized school,
Okay.
1955.
Can we talk about some of the teachers that you had? Do you remember their names?
Well, I had, my first grade teacher was Frances Braley. She married Lawrence Steele in Thornton, and they lived in Thornton. And she taught school up to Lincoln until she retired.
Wow, wow.
And then I had one in my first, she was my first grade teacher. And must have been right through to the middle grades, because, well, I had other teachers.
That's all right. Let's talk about reflecting on elementary school. What was fun about elementary school? Did you have a friend in elementary school?
Well, we all had to participate. If we got there early, we had to build the fires in the wintertime. Otherwise, the boys had to, most of the time the boys would build the fire, or the school teacher.
Wow.
But then when we wanted a hot lunch, we would take food and we'd warm it up on the old wood stove. I can remember doing that. Sometimes the milk didn't get very warm, but we ate it.
I haven't heard this story yet, so this
Well,
is fun.
I can just try to remember. I remember trying to make milk, a thickened milk, so we could have a soup. Well, you got to have it at a certain temperature, and it doesn't thicken.
Would there have been any sports activities to play during your elementary school years that you can recall?
Oh, we had ball games.
Musicals?
We had music teachers later on. We had a music teacher that came in. We had a handwriting teacher. Do you remember Doug Robertson?
Yes, I do.
Well, he was our handwriting teacher. Can't remember the writing firm that he had, but he, and I don't know if he's still alive or not.
I don't know that. I don't dare tell. I'll get myself into trouble. So we move on to high school. Where did you attend high school?
Oh, I went to Plymouth High School.
How did you get there?
Well, we had, my first few years, I used to walk from my house to the next door neighbor and ride with her to West Thornton, and we'd pick up another girl, Arlene Merrill, and she just died. And then we come to Plymouth because Ida Horner and Ruth, her sister, worked in Plymouth, so we girls would ride with them for, well, it must have been 3 or 4 years before, and then as soon as I got old enough to get a license, my father let me take the car, and I'd take the kids to high school. I didn't go over to West Thornton because I had my own brothers and sisters and my cousins, so that filled the car when I started working in Plymouth.
Can you remember the type of car it was?
I think it was an old Ford.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. If there's something that comes back from your education in Plymouth and Thornton, and I'm putting you on the spot, What might it be? What do you remember? What stays with you today about your education? It could be a teacher. It could be a subject that you enjoyed.
Well, I don't know that I just know that I like music, and my grandmother and mother taught me to play the piano. And then I took a few lessons, but I enjoyed the music right through high school. Anything else? Nothing special in grade school. High school, I didn't do too much on sports because time was against me there. I had to either get to school or wait for my ride home.
That's a common theme of people when I'm interviewing. They had to go back to the farm. They had duties on the farm before and after school, and transportation was really an issue.
Yeah, especially out of Plymouth.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But
any teacher that strikes your mind, that comes to your mind from high school?
Oh, from high school, Miss Riley.
Agnes Riley.
Agnes Riley. George Dawson, because he taught me my bookkeeping, and I know he was a coach, but he also taught bookkeeping.
Is George Dawson and Jack Dawson the same thing? Same person?
I think it's the same person.
Is it? All right, because Dad talked a lot about him too as a coach.
Yeah.
As a coach, and I've seen pictures of him. Interesting.
Well, I think he's in the yearbook.
Oh, and what do you have? This is your yearbook.
This is my yearbook, and I think the book was dedicated to him, wasn't it?
Oh. And the year is George Dawson.
This is George Dawson.
All right. And so this is a picture of him, and it looks like a service picture. Coach.
It looks as though he went into the service.
It does. Now in the Armed Forces, the class of 1943 affectionately dedicates this yearbook to you.
Yeah.
That's neat. That's neat.
But Miss Riley was, I don't know, I looked up to her. She was my, bookkeeping. What's the other thing she taught? Anything she taught. I can remember one morning I walked into her classroom and I didn't say good morning to her. So she reprimanded me for it. And she says, that's not a very good way to start the day.
Do I tell the audience you had Miss Riley? I had Miss Riley. There's probably somebody else, Jane, that has Miss Riley? No?
No, I don't.
Evie did.
Oh, Evelyn did. All right.
Evie
she
did.
did. So she's been around for quite some time.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have her here in the stories she could tell us, too.
Oh, I know it. She was so stately and always same disposition.
That's
And
neat.
she was strict, just like Mr. Moores, Charles Moores, the headmaster.
Headmaster, you call him. That would be
Yeah.
our principal today.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. And how was he strict?
Well, he expected his students to behave themselves.
That's okay.
And I skipped school one day.
Oh my gosh, Mrs.
My
Holbrook skipped school.
senior year, there was a bunch of us that wanted to go. A bunch, I mean, there was as many as we could get in the car. I guess I'll put it that way. Thought we'd go to Plymouth Fair. So we went off at noontime and went up to Plymouth Fair, and he found out about it.
You were daredevils.
So we got a lecture the next day.
Well, that was it, though. It was a lecture, and then it stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he ask you if
I
you
don't
had a good
remember
time
that
at the
we-
fair?
I don't remember that.
I'm kidding.
I was ashamed of myself, though,
Wow.
because my senior year and pull something like that,
Did the parents find out?
oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
Let's chat about a little bit about your business life. You've had occupations over time. You were a stay-at-home mom for a bit, but then we move into a specialty. What did you do? How do people know you?
Well, my senior year in high school, through the help of Miss Riley, I worked for the, I think it was Ellen, somebody from the bank came up and asked for somebody to do some typing. And Miss Riley recommended that I would be all right for it. Now, this is before we even graduated. This is probably in the springtime of 1943.
Okay. Okay.
Because they wanted somebody to address envelopes. And as I remember, it was the state of New Hampshire that wanted, they had to send a notice out to everybody to have their accounts verified. So I had to address the envelopes. And I did that before I even graduated from high school. I had one teacher, I think his name was Mr. Bowlby. I'd like to know where he is now. But in order to pass, he had me type up some of his tests because I couldn't get in to have his classes since I was working at the bank. So he'd give me typing to do, and they happened to be some of his tests. But I graduated from high school thanks to him. And then that summer I was asked to work, it must have been the Penny Bank, because I worked for the Plymouth National Bank for a few years before, after high school, I worked for the Penny, because Milton Pettingill remembers me. My boss then was Frank Foster or Roy Spalding and Preston Martin.
Where was the bank located at that time?
And the bank at that time was where the present jewelry store is now. Wilson's jewelry store.
Mm-hmm. And you can still identify it as the bank if you look at the windows at the bottom, because they have the iron grates around them. And if we look inside to the back, that vault is still there.
I think the vault is still there, but I remember at the time there were 4 teller windows, and then around that was the office, the little cubicle of Frank Foster, Roy Spalding, and Ellen Smith, who was Savings Bank at that time.
So it's pretty rare for us to have 2 banks in one building.
Yeah.
And that continues when you move over to the current Northway Bank is now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're working in one place. Are you full-time, part-time then?
Well, when I went, after high school, I went in as full-time for the National Bank. And then after I got married, I would work part-time for the Savings Bank. And then that eventually worked into a full-time job, and then the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. You've got it. You were there during the era of the early 50s when Eisenhower comes to town. Yeah. And so we're over in the second bank that we call it. That
yeah,
wasn't
we're
the original.
over at the foot of Highland Street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You have recollections of when Eisenhower was here?
I just remember him being here. They had a big gathering. They must have dedicated the new bank building, I think, at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's when that picture was taken.
All right, so this is I would call it a historic pamphlet of the 2 banks together, Pemigewasset National Bank and Plymouth Guarantee Savings Bank. And it's really a well-done article. We have them at the Historical Society, but it's telling you who served as officers, what they could offer you in each of the banks, because they did offer you different things from one bank to the other, and of course, a lot on the history of the town. So,
it is.
Yes, it's a neat article. It's really well
and
done.
That gives you all the names of the people that served as officers from the time they started.
Is there a story from bank time that you're allowed to tell us? Is there something that you can remember? Anybody who came in the building, event? We didn't have a robbery there, did we? Coming up
Not
with
that I can remember. And if they did, they would keep us quiet, because if they got robbed up above us, it seemed as though they kept real still. They never told us. I mean, I don't remember. until the 40, late, no, it'd be more than that. I can remember them, somebody from Waterville come down. Something happened at the Canton branch, but we didn't know about it in Plymouth till it was all over with.
So it was a hush-hush.
Hush-hush,
All
yeah.
right,
They
that's
keep
good.
everything still.
That's good. Let's see. When you were in grade school, you did work at a glacier park?
And when I was 8th grade, maybe, I don't know. It was 8th grade, I think. I was a guide at Glacial Park up in the Millbrook section of Thornton.
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle owned the park, and he made up this big story about the glacier coming through and forming these potholes and everything. And I guided people through. And that's the picture of the falls as it was then, and I believe the falls are still there, but I have no idea what they look like because the park is not open.
And it says Millbrook Cascade. That's the name
That
of the
was
falls. And it also says Thornton Old Home Week.
That's what this picture was taken from.
And this is dated 1906. Do we still have Thornton Old Homes Day today?
We still have an old home day. Usually it's in the fall, September.
So more than 100 years have gone by and you're still doing it in your town. Wow.
I don't know that they did it every year, though.
Okay, that's neat. This is a picture of you, correct?
Yeah. One of the people that were going through, I think he was from Rhode Island, he took that picture and he sent it to me.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. 1941, guide at Glacial Park, Phyllis, Benton, Holbrook.
Yeah.
I'm showing the audience. If you want more, come. That sounds great. Oh, let's see. Let's chat just a little bit, if we can, about living in Thornton over time. Living in Thornton, associating yourself with Plymouth as well. What thoughts come to your mind as a child, teenager, young adult?
Well, of course, we lived on a farm, so we had our chores to do. But that's where I learned to drive. I had to drive. My father taught me to drive the truck for him to load the hay on. And you had to have a steady foot on the pedal, because he was on top spreading the hay out.
Oh my gosh.
And
you're the oldest.
But I learned, I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So that I think I know all my brothers and sisters did the same thing. But
Interesting. So when you say farm, outside of haying, you did some Dad did some logging.
Dad, yeah,
Was there anything else that was grown on the acreage that you had? Did you have a vegetable garden?
Oh, we always had a vegetable garden. My mother always canned. And we always had chickens. And we had pigs, because she used to can pork back then. My husband never could eat pork, so I never had to learn to eat pork either or cook it. But I can remember that pork used to taste pretty good.
Fresh, and you raised it.
Yep. And the chickens too.
Wow.
We kids always had baby chickens to raise,
All right.
but today they have everything.
Well, we did what we did to make a living.
They had to
So
make
many
yeah.
in this area here
Yeah.
did. And it was seasonally based, I guess. You did something different in the spring than the fall than
In the fall, of course, in the wintertime, they did sugaring.
Wow.
Because they had a sugar orchard up to Millbrook, or they'd tap every maple tree along the road. And now I believe the Bentons, they go up into Bethlehem and tap trees up there.
Quite a business.
It's
Quite a business.
It's quite a business.
Yes, very much so.
Well, the
very much
Benton,
so.
the sugar shack is that's where we used to live.
Is that right?
Right at the foot of the hill by the sugar shack.
Okay. Okay, that's a good one for people to know.
That's to remember.
I'm going to share with you, I'm going to state a topic, a word, and you tell me what comes to mind. And if you want to pass, you just pass. You ready?
I think so.
And we'll see. The weather.
Oh, I'm sure it's changing, but I can remember walking to school on snowbanks. No, they were drifted so hard between our house and the school, we walked on the drifts.
Okay.
But if we had a flood, we didn't go to school.
Interesting. That is interesting.
1938 flood, I think it was. We had this old fellow, Russell Cochran, took us, all of us kids, out in an old boat, and we rode around the field by our house in the water. It was so high.
Wow.
That's between where our house was and the sugar shack. The water come down through there and took the road out.
So you're probably telling me that might have been the only time something like that was so high?
The water would be high.
Sure.
I think the water must have come in from Mill Brook. Because we always had water in our basement when the water was high, where we lived. We'd have to go downstairs and walk across the plank to get out of the basement.
Interesting.
But the floods in that area, I think they have flooded since, because it wasn't too many years ago the road washed out there.
Okay. Next one, fires. Can you recall any fires?
I think the worst fire, well, one of the fires that I remember was when the Smith family burned. We had a family that lived, at that time, I'm still living in the same house, but down the road, less than a half a mile, this family burned to death. The father and 5 children. The father was home babysitting the younger kids, and the mother and the older, one daughter was away somewhere that night. My husband worked 4 to 12 at Lincoln, and when he came home that night, he came in and told me the family had burned. I had heard the crackling on the radio, because they didn't have television, but I never thought to look out the window.
And you would have seen the blaze?
I could have seen the blaze from that fire, which would have been about the whole family.
And so this is the cemetery. This is Fairgrounds Cemetery, Fairgrounds Road Cemetery, Riverside.
That's where they're buried?
Yeah, it is. It's I used to run through there when I lived with my aunt occasionally, and I would go around and I was just stunned, taken back when I looked at the stone. It had 5 children. Each one had a separate picture. And I needed to know the story, and I never heard the story.
Well, at one time I thought their monument, or they had a stone where they burned. But they must have put another one there at the cemetery.
I think I've heard that. In Thornton there is a block someplace that in tribute, is that the right proper word, to honor what happened
those
there. Yeah, family members.
Well, I think was the kid Courier. Some Courier built a house right there because he would be related to Peggy, the mother.
Okay. Yeah, that's sad.
Some
That's a
way.
sad story.
It's sad to have a whole story, but
That's right. That's right.
I
It
couldn't
is.
believe it. I mean,
Wow.
the father and all those babies. But a wood stove will do that to you.
My next word is happier, I think. Fairs. What comes to mind when I say fairs?
Plymouth Fair, which is no longer going. And I have been to other fairs. We always tried to get to Sandwich Fair, and we went to Fryeburg Fair once. That's an interesting fair. But
A lot of livestock there?
yeah, they still have livestock, I think, at fairs, but I haven't been to a fair for.
We go to Sandwich Fair.
years.
It's close to home, but it still has a lot of the livestock there that we want to go through,
Yeah.
and brings back memories. Major changes in town. Let's speak to both if we can. Thornton over time and Plymouth over time. Are there changes that you can recollect?
Well, lots of changes. Families come and go. The biggest change that I've seen, I think, is in the number of children that are families that have moved here that are not long-term residents, let's put it that way. I read the Plymouth Record with all the honor rolls in all the schools. A lot of the names I don't recognize at all. Very few natives. That's one of the changes, but the rest of it is I guess the biggest change is the culture has changed. What do I want?
Are we talking about community?
What the children have to do, what people have to do to work. You don't have there's nothing that really draws. The only thing that draws people to the area is, it used to be they had to go through the mountains. What do they call that? I can't bring that to mind.
Well, Plymouth is referred to, still is, as the gateway to the White Mountains. And they used to stop here on their way to the White Mountains.
Yeah. Well, they used to have ski trains.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right. You are right. Mm-hmm.
But
Well, they used to have trains.
trains,
They used to have
yeah.
trains.
Yeah, they used to have, yeah.
And they would stop here and they would stay at an inn perhaps, socialize a little bit before they move on to the White Mountains. What did we have for skiing way back when?
Well, I thought you had Frontenac back then.
You had Tenny Mountain
Then
back
Tenny
then.
Mountain came, but
Right.
that didn't come till later. That's when Sam Hall took over.
That's right. That's right. Sam Hall and Mr. French. Was it John,
John
I
French.
think the two of them together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Started
Yeah,
Tenny Mountain.
That's right. Very good. Over the years, teenager, young adult today, were there people in town, the area, that supported you, mentored you, that meant something to you? Could be the workplace, but it doesn't have to be.
Well, it seemed as though I always had a job to do. I mean, because I worked in the bank. In 1943, then I took time off to have the 2 kids. Then the bank was Plymouth Guarantees. Plymouth Guarantee became First New Hampshire Bank. The penny became another bank. Right now my mind is a blank.
Yeah. Let's talk about your children, since you have one here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You have how many children?
I have 2 daughters.
Chat a little bit about.
And they've both married. One of them lives here in Plymouth. Janie lives here in Plymouth. She married Bob Clay. And Evie lives in North Carolina. She married Doris and Eddie Fitzmaurice's son, Dave.
Dave. Dave, hi.
an only child. And they lived right here in Plymouth. They both went to high school here.
Wow.
And then moved on. He went into the service. And the year she got married, he was stationed in Texas. So that was their honeymoon. They went to Texas. Then they went to Europe. He was stationed over in Germany. We had the privilege of going over there one year, so that was nice because Bud was able to visit all the places that he saw when he was in the war.
Wow. Wow.
And then Bob and Janie have stayed right here in Plymouth. And
you have grandchildren?
yep, I got, how many grandchildren I got?
Oh boy, it may be the wrong question to ask. I'm putting my hand up
I
right
just
now.
can't remember. I mean, I got five grandchildren. And then I got great-grandchildren. I got six great-grandchildren. Yeah.
You remembered.
Yep.
Yep, it's okay. It's okay. Did you have a best friend when you were a child? Did you have a best friend? I know you were pretty busy and you
Not
had your
really, but
siblings.
you know, I've come across a picture of the Yettons. Certain families followed each other through school. You know, the Benton family, we went to Plymouth High School. The Yetton family went to Plymouth High School. So all the kids seem to remember each other.
That's neat. That is
I
neat.
had, Doris Yetton was in my class in high school, and Joanne was in my sister's class in high school. And then one of them was in my brother's class. That must have been.
I'm going to search
Yeah.
here because there was a picture, if I can grab it, of elementary school with the children and their names.
Well,
This one. Thank you.
this
That one.
this is the one-room schoolhouse. And at that time, all 8 grades were taught by the same teacher. So you had 7-year-olds, 20-year-olds.
And the numbers
This one
of
is
that
20
school?
years old.
So this is the number of children that was typical in a class at that time? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10,
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
12 students in a class.
In that, yeah.
And the teacher I am trying to find is Frances Braley
Braley.
Steele.
Yeah.
And when you and I were in the cemetery walking along, there was Steele.
David Steele was buried in their lot, Francis and Lawrence Steele's lot.
Do I dare mention the names that were here at the Thornton Center School in 1934?
Well, I think people will recognize, this is my brother, Scott, that's me.
Scott Benton.
Scott Benton.
Phyllis
yeah.
Benton.
Yep. And this is Charlotte Adams. She was Adams, but I think she married a Paquette.
Okay.
That's Nelson Sweeney. And this is
Roger Steele.
This is Roger Steele. Now this would be from the Millbrook area, and he would be a brother to Lawrence Steele, who married Frances Braley.
Oh my gosh.
This is Johnny Kelvin. That's Danny Cochran. He lived in Connecticut when he died, and Johnny lived in Florida.
So
Johnny
you-
Kelvin lived right up the road from where we lived here.
All right, and then the back row?
And that, yeah, I said that was, this one is, that's an Edward Haynes. That is a Hazel Ripley. I think she married a Willoughby.
History is amazing, what you can remember.
And this is my Aunt Marianne Merrill.
Okay.
She lived right next door. And this is Kip Shaw's, Clifton Shaw's. Now, Kip has lived in the area all his life, and he died the same day my husband died. He was about the same age.
Don't forget.
But that's the way the one-room schoolhouses were.
Interesting, there's an ad on the back, which is always fun to find. Ads can share a lot. And then thinking backwards, looking backwards, some of the names still resonate with people in the area.
Yeah.
I should ask you, during your life now, at almost 93 years of age, what are you doing to keep busy? I'm trying to make a connection without me saying it. What do you do?
Well, I like my flower garden. I'm all through doing vegetables, but I'm a cemetery trustee. And I tell people I take care of the dead people. I tell people I take care of the dead people.
I'm sorry.
But
Yeah.
somebody has to do it.
Well, you and I were walking. The cemetery is a beautiful cemetery up there.
Yeah.
Has great history, and someone shared with me that you're the go-to person. And I think what they were implying, if they had a question about maybe some of the genealogy or stories of Thornton, you would be the person that they would go to.
Well, I try to keep all the obituaries, and you know, obituaries years ago used to tell people a lot. And town reports years ago used to used to tell you more about the town than they do today. But that's where the reason I keep them is because I keep track of the families that way. Somebody will die that I know, but then you look down their obituary and you'll see that you also knew their parents or relatives. And that's the way I keep track of people in the cemetery. If somebody calls me, somebody called me from Laconia. She was a Blaisdell from Laconia, Meredith Way, and I knew the name Blaisdell from working. And then she says, I think it was her, not her. Her father was buried, born in Thornton, and his name was but she couldn't find the record at the townhouse.
So they come to you.
And they came to me. Well, I found out the people that she was interested in. It was William Walker and his wife Gladys. Well, I can remember my folks talking about old Billy Walker.
Okay.
Well, you know, names like that. Russell Cochran. She says, well, we saw his name in the cemetery, and I said, I think they're buried out to Mad River. Well, sure enough.
They were.
I got my record out, and there they were.
Switching gears just a little bit. The years that you spent as a banker, you were involved with bank, you're on the main street of Plymouth. What things have come and gone? Some that you were happy they came, and others you were sad to see them go. Was there a business or two that is no longer there?
Well, that's right. I mean, think of the Methodist church that burned in 1943. That's gone from Main Street. Well, in fact, a lot of the churches are further out now. But gas stations.
We had so
At one
many.
time, the town was full of gas stations.
Yep.
And then I missed J.J. Newberry's. There's no other place to go but Walmart, I guess, now.
But are gone from the main street.
They're gone from the main
Absolutely.
street.
Yep. Yep.
Anderson's Bakery is gone. There isn't a
50 years.
bakery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Turned it today. It is 1766.
Well, think of it. There used to be the First National and A&P,
That's right.
and then Adams Market, and they're all gone from Main Street.
One thing we still have is our common, and for me, that's really precious.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really, really important. I would watch the same people. As part of the Semino family, Wilkie family, the two sisters would be sitting on that same bench, and you'd go by and you'd wave.
Yeah.
Those are good memories, and I know it's not me. I know it's been shared so many times from other people.
Well, I've talked with old people that sit there just for something to do and watch the people go by.
That's right.
Well, Friday night used to be a night when people would come to town and just sit on Main Street to see the people. I can remember one family, Gus Berg and his wife Sadie and their sister and their daughter used to visit every Friday night, and then they'd stop at the furniture store and visit.
Which furniture store would that be?
Well, that'd be Plymouth Furniture on
At this
Main
end.
Street.
I was thinking of Harris Brothers, that they were there in the center, but absolutely Plymouth Furniture.
Plymouth Furniture. Yeah.
That's neat. That's neat. Those are the things that we're trying to save. The businesses that were there,
Yeah.
how they've changed over time, and the houses that were there, etc. If you had a group of people in front of you now, let's say teenagers, young adults, with all your years of wisdom of living, what might you say to these people now?
Well, I wish the kids would learn to save as they start working, to begin to save, learn to save part of what they earned. If it might be 10 cents a week, and I think they try to teach that to kids, but I don't know that they're all doing it.
And are you concerned? Are we saving for retirement?
Well, not necessarily, but some of them they've got to save if they can to even get through school. And then we've got retirement. Because, I don't know, they're talking now that we're not going to have enough Social Security go through, but we just have to wait and see.
So as a person who's worked in a bank all your life, if you start saving early and the compounding of it, and my dad used to say something similar to that, if you could save the $1 a week, I think I went up. What did you used to say, a dime? A dollar a week to me.
Well, today, if you can get them to save a dime, you'll be lucky. Because if you give your grandchildren a dollar bill, they spend it. They don't think about saving
I
it.
think that's really good advice for all of us.
I think they need to think through their life, not spend every nickel you get, but sometimes they have to. Look at the people that have to work 2 and 3 jobs to make a living.
We're nearing the end of our session today. An hour goes by too quickly. Is there any other story that you'd like to share? And if not, should we maybe look at the quick pictures? We've done a few pictures here. Here's one. This looks like, is this the one we were going to
I think that's the Clay family, isn't it?
Is this the Clay family? Hold on.
Yeah, that's Bob and Janie and their family.
All right.
And I went, they had a gathering.
This is Mom, this is you.
Yeah.
This is Dad. Am I correct on that?
Bob
I can't see.
and where's Janie? She's...
This is why, this is a good pitch, watch this. This is why on the back of every picture that we show, and Jane is over there right now and she's doing the same thing for us. She's going from left to right. Who are these people?
Yeah.
This is typically the pitch I do at the very, very end. This picture
Well,
here.
this was my 90th birthday.
Whoa.
I don't know if they can see that
That's a tough one.
but I wrote on that what it was because I've been trying to sort old pictures from back in the 1900s, and there's nothing written on the back of them.
Are you listening, audience?
Nothing. I had a box of pictures that came from my grandmother's, and some of these people were two generations back, but I had no idea who they were. Because my grandmother Merrill came from Illinois, and her mother was married 3 times, so each time now this is my great-grandmother, but her name was Cora Vanaken. Vanaken. You don't have that name around here.
Not at all. Stunning, stunning picture.
But she was first married to a Ferris, then she married a Dunkley, then she married Vanaken, and they came east.
But I think I don't have to do my ending today. I always say to you people, please, we're taking pictures. Thank goodness for the use of technology, but we're taking all these pictures on a device, but some of us aren't saving the pictures or we're not printing them off, and therefore to identify them has become an issue.
Yeah.
And I don't speak just to families, I'm also speaking to organizations. I'm careful of organizations, but I wonder if we went to the police department, if we went to the fire department, do they have a history that includes pictures where people that are identified? So 100 years from now, we can find out who is the chief. I'm not sure, but...
well, I don't know either, and especially small towns.
Yeah, yeah.
I know they don't have good records in other respects, but...
Well, it's hard to get somebody to embrace it, to enjoy doing something like that, but it's vital.
Well, yeah, you got to enjoy your work, not to take a picture of it, so...
Phyllis, I think it's been my pleasure meeting you, and I've always known the name, but I haven't had the opportunity. That's what's so neat about what I'm able to do. And yes, it's for our historical society, but at the same time, for me personally, you hear the name of somebody over and over and over again, but until you walk their gardens, and until we start to chat with each other, you really don't get to know somebody. So it's been my privilege.
But you know, working in the bank, I have all these names that I either worked with, waited on, did a mortgage for. And I think of the names that way back. One of my friends said the other day, Chubby Walker didn't go to school in Plymouth, and I said, I think he did, because he was in my class. He's in my yearbook. But Chubby Walker he lived a lot more in Wentworth and Rumney area. So I know the names not only in the Pemmy Valley, but also Baker Valley. Some of the names in Ashland.
Your memory is terrific. I wish I had memory. This is interesting. How many of you have your 1943? And we've been collecting these at the Historical Society because there are still people coming back, most recently, and saying, do you have a copy of? So I've been learning, we didn't always have a yearbook. During some of these years, and especially during World War II, they're telling us there wasn't a yearbook for a couple of years. There was a picture, a class picture. We're trying to identify some of the folks now. We can find them. Then you have to find the person who can go through them. So one day I'm at Charlie Durgan's house. Charlie has his yearbook picture, and he has noted the names of them, and I was able to gather his entire class picture.
Yeah.
But when you open this up, it brings memories back.
Well, I had, because I've got pictures of all of my brothers and sisters, and then all of their children, and they went to school. They're down in here, but I also have the graduation list for all those kids. So you could go through those lists and find families that go another generation back.
Well, that's another story for another time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today with Phyllis Benton Holbrook. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you at another episode of the Memories of Plymouth.